Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jacob.
And thanks for coming on this journey with us. Today's an exciting one. So we're doing a playable card tier list.
Yeah, so now in this list here, in this tier list, a D in this, which is our lowest rank, we go S, A, B, C, and D. A D in this could be a B or an A in a full card set tier list.
So we have, I think, 40 cards, and all of these are playable. All of these will hold their own in a deck. I think the main criteria we're going off of is flexibility. So how many different decks can you play this card in? How overall powerful is it?
Yep.
How useful is it? The value, meaning how much ink does it cost versus how much you get out of it.
Inkable versus non-inkable could be a factor.
Inkable obviously is a good consideration as well. And so, should have said this from the start. If you're if you're listening on the podcast, this is also a YouTube video. So we have the tier list on screen. You can see it all. If you're listening, we'll continue to kind of reiterate where the rankings are, but this will be a good YouTube video to watch because we're going to go a little quick here with so many cards. But with that said, we're going from like ink type to ink type. And considering, again, the different play styles, the flexibility, and everything along those lines, these are all, again, good cards. We have them scattered out so far. If you can see on screen, we're going to start with Ruby, go to Sapphire, get into Steel, finish up with Amethyst, Emerald, and Amber. So this is a weird one to start off with, but Aladdin Heroic Outlaw, where do you got it?
Yes.
S tier. I
S tier.
Obviously agree. It's one of the most powerful cards in the game. Can do a 4 lore shift in one turn. Speaking of shift, it can also shift on to a different Aladdin card, which basically then gives it rush as well as an ability. Since you're shifting it, it can be ready right away. So it's just extremely powerful. Catch your opponent off guard. Extremely powerful to shift the lore. And a really good value with shift and 7 ink.
It's questing while challenging, so
yeah,
it's insane.
It kills two birds with one stone, as they say. So, on to the next one, Aladdin Street Rat, the baby Aladdin of the set.
I'm gonna go C.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
B, C.
Let's go B.
B?
The only reason I hesitate is because it does take away a lore.
Okay.
So without the lore takeaway, it's definitely just a C tier.
The shift is huge. So
it does allow you to shift. It does take away one lore. Aside from that, it's probably D tier. I think its abilities and the bigger brother Aladdin in the set gives it a lot to go off of.
Okay.
Maleficent, what do you think?
I'm thinking A because of the cost.
I was right there with you. I think it's an S tier card and a B tier cost, and so you kind of average out to A.
Yeah.
I think that having a character that also has Dragonfire is super powerful, but 9 is just so expensive that you have to really be prepared, no pun intended.
We'll get to it.
To play this card and to have a game strategy around it.
I totally agree.
Maui, I would say, gosh, this is a hard one.
Which Maui is that?
B. This is the Ruby Maui. He's the character with Rush and Reckless, and so he's really powerful from the sense of he can go out and take your opponents off guard. He's a very good character for a control deck where you're trying to control the board and take your opponents off and be the heavy hitter challenger for that deck.
I mean, that's a big damage swing coming out of nowhere.
That's why I have him at B.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with B.
Mickey, Big Mickey, Brave Little Tailor. What do you got?
I'm gonna go with A.
I would agree with that one as well. I think the evasive and the 4 lore are very powerful, but again, 8 is really late in the game, and so you have to have a lot of other stall tactics on the board for it to really be effective. And so again, super heavy hitter, really high cost though, so I don't think you can put him S.
I mean, I'm a huge evasive guy, as probably most of our listeners know, so this has a special place in my heart. But I think A is completely fair.
Okay, I agree. Pongo's next. I'll let you take this one because he's your baby.
Personal S tier, probably B to C.
I think this depends on the opponent. I even might put him A, but I would be between A and B.
I say B.
I think I'm hedging B, and the reason I would say between A and B is because more novice players that aren't well equipped to play with evasive can get really caught off guard and get really flustered with evasive. And so I think evasive cards in general have a lot of value behind them. When you get into the higher levels of play, which we keep getting stomped by, you'll run into fire your cannons or fire the cannons, grab your sword, dragon fire, and so people will be able to deal with them in a lot more creative ways than your beginner players. So I think that's probably why he's not higher on my list too.
One of the cards that can deal with Pongo is
be prepared. Pun intended on this one. So I kind of think this one's S tier, but I think I'm going to go A, and here's the reasoning behind it, and you can disagree if you want. I think it's extremely, extremely situational. So Be Prepared is a action card that clears your characters and your opponent's characters from the board. So clean slate, just items left on the board. So if you're falling behind, your opponent has 4 or 5 cards on the board, you only have 1, maybe none, clean slate. It can't be played if you've got 4 or 5 cards on the board and you're trying to stop your opponent because it clears your board too.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little situational, but I think it's extremely powerful in the right situation.
I'm actually leaning more towards S, but because I just think that being able to, when you're so far behind in a game and you're able to come back with 1 card, I think is super helpful. That's why I would think S, but I'm fine with A tier.
Yeah, I think A tier is the way to go. You don't want to water down S, and I think we both agree that Dragonfire's S tier.
Completely agree.
One of the best actions in the game. Just take out a character right away. Even if their ink is still drying, you just remove them from the board. Whether they cost 9 like Maleficent, whether they cost 2 or 3 like some of the lower impactful cards, like a Pongo. It might be really frustrating for your deck to deal with, but if you have Dragonfire, it doesn't matter.
It can completely get rid of the other S tier card, Heroic Outlaw, and just obliterate it. The only thing I have against that card is it's unequal, but other than that, it's perfect.
Agree. Okay, so Shield of Virtue. I think I kind of jumped the gun there. I think it's C tier. I think it's super usable. I think it can help you. And can, if you have it on the board, can put you in a position to win the game. But again, I think it's so situational that you kind of have to leave it on the lower end of the board.
With the perspective of all the other cards we have here, I'm thinking D. If you think of it within all of the other cards that are here,
you can throw it down there. That's fine.
I am thinking D.
Okay, that's all for Reds. That's super fast. Just a recap for the audio listeners here. We have Aladdin Heroic Outlaw and Dragonfire as S tier. We've got Maleficent, the big dragon from Ruby on
the big one, the 9 cost.
Yeah, the 9 cost on starting off A tier. Then we've got Mickey Mouse, Brave Little Tailor on A tier as well, followed by Be Prepared. All super, super impactful cards, just kind of costly and situational. So not quite an S tier. In B tier, we got Maui Hero to All, the massive rush tank that can take out a ton. We've got Aladdin Street Rat, the little brother to Heroic Outlaw, and then Pongo being a really annoying evasive character to have to deal with. And then lastly, all the way down in D, we have Shield of Virtue, which again is super kind of situational, but can ready up your characters if you need to do a couple actions in one turn from a single card. That'll be good, but again, very situational. So
and also it's probably a B tier in an overall card list.
Yes.
So it's still very good. Just within the perspective of all the other cards we have here, I think it is probably on the lower scale.
Okay, ready to move to Sapphire?
I am.
Well, that's the next one we have up here.
I am.
Okay, again, starting kind of with a heavy hitter here, Aurora. The big Aurora, the 5 cost grants ward to the rest of the cards, the Dreaming Guardian.
Before you even did it, I was thinking A.
Are we going to interlink these? Like, is it high A? I kind of think it's like, might be right behind
That's fine.
Maleficent.
That's fine, yeah. I like
So
that.
it's really annoying to deal with. So imagine getting 2 Auroras on the board where they do the protective embrace on each other, and then you can't Dragonfire anything.
I mean, that would be insane.
It's insane. I've done it once or twice. It's hard to get there, which again, why it's probably not an S tier. It's, only 2 quests, so it's not crazy getting you towards your goal. But I think it's so annoying to have to deal with, just like Pongo, just like some of these other higher end cards.
I will say, if you're able to shift it for 3 every turn, then it's S. Like, if you're able to shift that card that is that helpful for 3 costs, that's a huge deal.
That's true. The only reason that I say that, though, is moving on to the next one.
Yeah.
Belle has to go into S tier, right?
I'd put her in front of Dragonfire.
I can do that as well, actually. I have no problem with that. So Belle, the Strange but Special Legendary, she's the card where if you have 10 ink in your inkwell, she quests for a +4 or 5 total. Mm-hmm. So 2 Belles on the board, questing with 10 ink in the inkwell is 2 turns and the game's over.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot of builds to get there, and you have to do a lot of delay on your opponent to enable this type of strategy. But
it's so valuable.
With an Aurora on the board or a Bodyguard plus a Belle or 2,
yeah,
Belle is going to win you the game every single time.
And Belle's already in Sapphire, so you don't have to worry about the ink buildup. Sapphire is the ink buildup ink, so you don't have to worry about that.
It's fantastic.
Super helpful.
Okay, Hades. I think he's a little... He was definitely slept on by me at first. I think he's really powerful. I'm going to go B. What do you think about that?
I'm thinking high B.
Okay,
high B.
I will go below Maui then.
That's fair.
So Hades, the Sapphire Hades Infernal Schemer, he has an ability where when you play this character, you may put chosen opposing character into their player's inkwell face down. So given the strategy that we just talked about with Belle and having to build up your ink and having to delay your opponent some, Hades is a great card to take big, powerful cards off your opponent's board and keep yourself alive as you're getting to that point where you want to quest for 10.
Yeah, and it has a big negative, and that is that it's giving your opponent an extra card in their inkwell. Obviously, it's not the card they want to go in their inkwell.
Yep.
But you still are giving them an extra ink.
I agree, and it's non-inkable as well, and so that's a little bit of annoying. But it is a bit of a tank with 6 willpower, quests for 2, plus the ability. I think it's really strong. Little situational, which is why I wouldn't put it higher, but very strong. Can throw your opponent off if your opponent only has 1 card on the board. Like say you're playing a Ruby deck, like with Mickey Brave Little Tailor, and they're gonna quest for 4, take it off the board, quest for none.
I mean,
that's huge.
It's very true.
Okay, moving along. This is kind of a straightforward one. We've got the Sapphire Maleficent. Sorry, I'm just throwing these on here for you.
I agree with C.
I'm saying C. The reason I have this one on here is because, as you're kind of building up to the Belle strategy within your Sapphire ink ramp, Maleficent can be a good kind of distraction. Costs 5, quests for 3, 6 willpower. That's just a good all-around card. Can be a good distraction. So again, C tier on this list, but pretty high overall.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to put any 3 lore card like any lower than C. I think
that's the goal, is to get to 20, and when you're getting 3, that's a really good card.
Especially it's a little tanky too, so it's lasting.
Okay, I know that this is a favorite from some in the Sapphire set. Mickey Mouse Detective. I'm going D tier.
I agree.
So there's a few reasons for this. 1, non-inkable.
Mm-hmm.
2, you take the top card off of your deck and put it into your inkwell. It makes me nervous every single time that I'm putting something super important without knowing what it is. I still think if you're on an ink ramp deck, it's important, which is why it's in the playable list, but it's D tier.
I agree. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to finish with this one, and then I'll let you take over on Steel, Fishbone Quill. I think I've got to go A. I think I've got to go low A, high B. Hear me out. You just jumped out of your chair almost. And the reason is if you're okay, we'll go high B. We'll swap it down here to high B. The reason is if you're on an ink building deck, Fishbone Quill gives you more ink than any other card in the Sapphire set. Turn after turn, you can ink more cards, whether it's inkable or not. You can have it in your hand and ink it.
Okay.
If you're trying to build ink, name a better card.
Gravitala.
She gives you 1. This gives you 5.
What does it cost?
3. And then when you exert it every turn, it doesn't cost anything. Unlike some items that do cost to use again, it doesn't cost to use it.
Okay. I mean, I would think more low B, high C.
It's a little situational, but
because it's taking cards out of your hand that
again, situational. You can't play this by itself and it be useful. You have to have a strategy built around that working, which is why I don't have it at an S tier. But I think we'll hear you out. I can concede a little bit and drop it down to low B. So I'll recap real quick and then let Jake kick off Steel here. Bell at S tier. The 5 questing with 10 ink in the well is just a lot to handle if you're not prepared for it. Aurora, Guardian, big Aurora, the shifting one, and Sapphire as well. Grants ward to all the rest of the cards in the set, keeps them all from being dragon-fired or directly impacted by any other items. Then at B tier, we've got Hades and Fishbone Quill. Going on down to C, we've got Maleficent. And then finally, D tier, Mickey Mouse Detective. All right.
So what is the subtitle of this? I forget this.
Here, we'll put him to the end, and then we'll let you go with the one, the small hook first. It's probably better to do the small one, anyways. That's the
Dreamborn hook.
Yeah. So for the audio listeners, we're starting with the 1 cost Captain Hook, the Forceful Duelist, on Steel.
I'm gonna go with D here.
Ooh, see, I think C.
I can go high D, like high D, low C. I just think
C's a little empty. Let's go C.
Okay, I'll do C. I can.
Okay, give me your thoughts and I'll tell you why I think C.
I just think it's a little like, I get it, the value you're getting for damage for that cost. But it's just, I think it's just overall a little underwhelming.
Is there another 1 cost card that does 3 damage?
To my knowledge, no.
That's why it's that high. Is because if you're playing, and I know it's a challenger, so you only get that 3 damage when challenging, which is honestly the only thing holding it back from being a little higher. 1 cost, 3 damage can take out a 3 cost card. So it just punches well above its weight, which is why I would put it at C over D. Okay. Then we move on to the Hans from Steel, which is 13th in line.
So this one, I discovered was not a friendly card to me. Tore down the meta deck that I was using, basically, our meta deck. So from that experience, I'm probably gonna put it in B. I would think low B.
I would say low B, high C.
High C is fine. We can fill up C.
Okay,
high C is fine.
Now we're getting a little more clear out. So why do you have him there? What's his deal?
So whenever he quests, which he's questing for 2, he deals 1 damage to chosen enemy character, which is, I mean, you're already doing what you're doing. You're questing for 2, and then you get to deal, 1 damage to just the chosen character.
And if you have somebody else on your board fighting and they need a little bit of assistance, or you've got a cheap Pascal or Lilo or Maleficent from Amethyst that has 1 willpower, then it could just completely take them out.
I mean, it's able to banish an S tier card in Pascal, so I mean, that's pretty... We're gonna get to that.
Okay, are we in agreement on Giant Tink here? Do we even need to talk about it?
No, S tier.
I'd probably go right there.
I could put it in low S. Like, if we're...
The reason I put it ahead of Dragonfire in S tier is because of the shift.
That's true.
Because it's got 2 really good abilities. Is there another card that has 2 abilities? That has 3 abilities? It's got shift.
There's a select few. I mean, when you bring it on into play, it instantly deals 1 damage.
Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. You can shift it for 4. Mm-hmm. As you just said, Rock the Boat does 1 damage to all opposing characters on the board.
And I believe the other ability, I can't remember it right off the top of my head.
Puny Pirate deals 2 damage to chosen opposing character after you banish opposing character.
I mean, it's dealing a lot of just straight damage.
You could technically take out an entire board playing it once.
Could, 100% you could.
Shift it for 4, so it's ready to play right away.
You're dealing with those weaker cards at 4.
Deal 1 damage to everybody. So let's say there's 3 cards on the board. Deal 1 damage to a 1-cost Lilo. Mm-hmm. So Lilo's now out because she's only got 1 willpower. You then challenge another card on the board and take them out because she's got 4 strength, and so she's probably going to take them out too. And then you add 2 additional to the 3rd card on the board, and you just wipe the board with 1 card.
It's nasty. It's nasty.
S tier. Whole New World.
I'm high A.
I was going to say, this might be one where we disagree the most, but I would probably put it about there too. So A Whole New World, again, for everybody that's either listening or not super familiar yet, is each player discards their hand and draws 7 new cards. So if you're on an ink ramp deck, or if you run a really light deck where you'll need more cards, A Whole New World will take you from 1 to 2 cards in your hand to 7 cards in your hand.
And I think a card it's probably a little bit comparable to is Be Prepared, because it's taking out your thing
Correct.
and their thing. But
Correct.
The thing that this does is it fills it back up, where Be Prepared doesn't. Be Prepared doesn't fill your board back up once it takes it all down.
Yes, I agree. And the overlooked part of this might be if your opponent is playing an Amethyst deck, has 5 cards in their hand because they've used Friends on the Other Side and the Maleficent that draws a card. They might have a strategy around the cards in their hand played out for the next couple moves. If you A Whole New World that hand, you don't know what they're getting either. So if you need cards and they don't, they might have a strategy. You don't. You just need cards. So you're hurting their strategy and helping yours at the same time.
And the reason it isn't S is because your opponent could have 1 or 2 cards in their hand, and that's
it's situational. So if you might be helping them out too, it's not inkable. I'm even gonna drop it below Mickey here on A tier because of that. So I think it is a little bit situational and can potentially help out your opponent, like you said. So you just got to be careful when playing it. Okay, so we're getting to the Captain Hook. We moved from the beginning because we wanted to talk about the baby Captain Hook first, but this is Captain Hook, Captain of the Jolly Roger. And he's got a cool ability too. Whenever he goes, he gets to take Fire the Cannons out of the discard pile.
So obviously it's situational because you might not even have... I mean, if you're putting this card in your deck, you have Fire in the Cannons.
If you don't, then it's a D tier card. Not even on this, just in general, it's a D tier card.
Yes. I would say on this, though, I'm thinking DC.
Okay, I was thinking CB, so
C's fine.
We'll go like mid C tier here. I think that the theme we have for these C cards is all lower than some of the counterparts we've gotten, but to keep in mind, like, if you build a strategy around these, like, these cards can beat the ones we have in S tier if you have a strong strategy built around it. The synergies between these cards.
If you're working with them, yes, for sure.
The synergies between these cards is really high. But I think we're also getting into some higher tier cards. So grab your sword.
High A.
High A. Higher than, like, Mickey or Aurora?
I'm thinking in between Mickey and Aurora.
Okay, I'll go with that. So grab your sword is the action that does 2 damage to every card on the board. So, a little bit stronger than the Giant Tink, initial ability.
I mean, that's why it's not an S, is because Tink's there. She exists because it can... I mean, it can also deal 2 damage to chosen character and it's questing, so
yeah,
Tink can do a lot more things than this can.
I might go a little lower if it were just me, because
if you want to move it,
no,
high B is fine.
It's you know what, I'm going to. I take it back, and here's my reasoning. It's not inkable.
Okay, that's fair.
If your opponent is playing a heavy deck, it's not useful much at all because that 2 is not going to take them out. So it's situational to very useful against light decks and mediocre useful against heavy decks.
Okay, that's fair. That's completely fair.
I think that you would put this a lot higher because you're used to a light deck because that's what you like to run. And so this would really disrupt your plans, but against all decks in general, it's not quite there.
That's fair.
Lastly, Smash, which is a 3-cost card that deals 3 damage to any chosen character.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you putting that one?
I'm putting it in D.
Okay, I was right there with you. I think it's really useful, and I think it can catch people off guard and can be really powerful for a card like Cheshire Cat, where if you have to fight Cheshire, which banishes the chosen character that's challenging, then you don't lose anything for playing Smash, but if you're trying to challenge Cheshire, then you do. That being said, it's again very limited in its range, but I think it's still again D, but still very playable if you're running a steel deck.
Yeah, but it can help you out of sticky situations.
Yeah, that's the big one. Is that again it is playable because if you're starting to fall behind, that can catch you back up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Recap Steel. We finished the top Steel cards here. So
we've got Tinkerbell Giant Fairy in S. We've got Whole New World in A. We've got Grab Your Sword in B. We've got Hans, I think it's 13th in line, in C. Both Captain Hooks and Steel are in C.
Two of the 3. So Captain of the Jolly Roger and Forceful Duelist, Captain Hooks in C.
Gotcha.
And then Smash in D.
Smash in D.
Okay. We're halfway there. We've got 3 left.
Alrighty.
Amethyst, your favorite.
My favorite. So I'm thinking low A, high B.
I will agree with that. So I might say high or low A, but with Mini Elsa and Amethyst, I think it's high B. Gets you ready to shift onto the legendary Elsa if you want to. The Exert ability is really cool to catch your opponent off guard if they just inked a card, or if they just played a card and it's not ready to duel yet, but you want to, you can exert it and then duel it. So I think it's got a lot of value there. Which brings us right into legendary
Big
Elsa, which again, I hate putting all the legendary cards in S tier, but
we've only got 2.
I'm not. I'm doing it. Never mind. I'm dropping it to
no,
A.
no.
I'm dropping it to A.
It's S. Come on.
Okay. It's the lowest of the S's then.
Because it could single-handedly win you a game.
That's true, and it has done that to me for a couple games.
Then how come that isn't like high S?
It's not inkable. It costs 8.
But if it's winning you a game,
it's not inkable. It's just you. It's again, if you get it early in a game or you get it on your first 7 draw. Like if I get it on my first 7 draw, I'm probably putting it to the bottom of my deck because I know I don't want to hang it around in my hand for 6 or 7 turns, and I don't want to keep it around knowing I can't ink it. So it's just a tough one since it's not inkable. If it was inkable, it would be top S tier for me, but since it's not, that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay.
The Dueling Jafar. This one is one I threw on here. The Wicked Sorcerer Jafar. I think like mid B tier, like kind of above Aladdin is probably where I would put him. Reasoning B, he's one of the best fighters, I think.
He's a big stat.
I think, yeah, so costs 4, can ink, challenger +3 to duel. So that stats give him 5/5 on strength willpower when he's challenging. So if you're using him as a fighter or a challenger in your deck, he's going to be really annoying to deal with.
100%. Totally
can take out 2 or 3 cards on his own.
Yeah, and still live.
Yeah. Okay, Maleficent on the Amethyst. We've got a couple of them, but this is our favorite, the Maleficent Sorceress.
So I'm thinking C. High C.
We were really far off on this one.
Really? What were you thinking?
High B, low A?
Really? Okay.
It's a card draw, and I'll put it B since you said C.
B's
but
fine.
It's a card draw. And Maleficent plays a character and just draws a card. You don't have to play the card like Friends on the Other Side. You play the card, put it on the board, and get to draw a card. So as many decks that can benefit from card draw, that's got to be on the top of the list.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay, we probably are really far off on this one too. Pascal.
S tier.
I would, and I put him on here for you. And
okay, low C. Low C is fine.
I'll go B.
Low C is fine.
No, I'll go B, and here's the reasoning. I think the evasive, again, for newer players or for people that aren't ready to deal with evasive or have direct damage cards are going to be very annoyed by him. But more experienced players or players that are playing direct damage decks are just going to deal with them really quickly.
That's perfectly understandable.
But I know he's your boy, and you love Pascal, so we'll put him a little higher up there.
You don't have to do that, but I just think, especially if you're playing against more like first-timer TCG players, that is going to be a game-winning card.
Agree. So the beginners out there that are trying to get into the game and aren't super in depth into all the strategies yet, Pascal can be a fun one to annoy your opponents with.
For sure.
Friends on the other side.
S.
I agree because of one reason. It's a song. If it wasn't a song, I would say A or B.
I would say still S because it's 3 costs. I think drawing 2 for 3 costs is insane value.
But you're technically only drawing 1 because you're replacing one of the cards with 2 cards. So if you don't sing it, then it costs you 3, and all you're essentially doing is replacing one of the cards with 2 more, but you're giving up 1 too. So I think the singing factor makes it S.
I think also what makes it S is if you're looking for a very specific card. Like if you're hunting for a dark card within your deck.
Yeah, and that's fair.
You're drawing to get there.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that this singing aspect of this makes it a lot more powerful. So if you're playing a late game deck where you don't necessarily need to quest that turn, or you're still ramping up your ink cycle or whatever it might be, using this as a song is super powerful so that you can still do the rest of the moves. A lot of decks, it's very versatile. Again, like we said on the Maleficent Sorceress card, a lot of decks can benefit from card draw. This is probably the best card draw card in the set.
Yes, by far.
Lastly,
we're going to disagree on this one.
I threw this one in here. I'm still not completely sold on it, but the Magic Mirror item, where are you going to say?
Low D.
Low D? See, I was going to say low C.
High B then. Or high D.
Okay, we'll go high D, and the only reason I'm conceding that is because it's not inkable.
See, I think it's not inkable and it's expensive.
It is expensive, but imagine you're in a late game control, you've got 10 ink, and you've only got 1 card in your hand.
If you're not playing Sapphire, you don't have 10 ink.
You could have it on a late game control deck with Ruby. Okay, it's not even 10. Say you have 8, and you've got 1 card in your hand. It's, I don't know, Baby Elsa, and you play Baby Elsa, you can either sing with her, or you can't sing, sorry. She's an item, so you exert her, spend 4 more, you still got 2 left. I think the fact that you can continue to get value out of it since it's an item is what makes it.
So you're saying you can use Elsa to exert it without paying the
No,
cost?
I'm saying it's not a song. Sorry, I misspoke on that one. It's just a regular item, but you can use it turn after turn. So if you've only got 1 card in your hand and what you keep drawing is low cost, you can keep exerting for 4 cost and stacking your hand back up turn after turn.
Okay, yeah.
So again, situational, extremely situational, not inkable, which is why it's so low to begin with. But I think given the right deck, it can really, really be a nuisance to deal with.
For sure.
Okay, that's the last Amethyst. So recapping Amethyst, we've got 2 in S tier. We've got Legendary Elsa. We have Friends on the Other Side, and then Friends on the Other Side would take in the place of the A tier. So we've got 4 in B tier. We've got Maleficent Sorceress. We've got the Baby Elsa Snow Queen. We've got Jafar Sorcerer, Pascal, and finally wrapping up Amethyst, we got Magic Mirror in D tier. So moving on to Emerald.
Alrighty.
First one, Flynn. I think this one is super overlooked.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Initially, I say B tier. There's a part of me that wants to say A.
Low A? I'm thinking low A.
Okay, we can. I'm gonna go. Okay, we'll go low A. So Flynn on the Emerald set, for those who aren't extremely familiar, is a 2-cost card that, when played and challenged and banished, the challenging opponent has to discard a card. So it quests for 2, which is also crazy for a 2-cost card. When he gets banished, the opponent loses a card. So especially if they don't have a card draw deck, then they kind of just have to leave him there and continue to let him quest for 2 over and over.
The reason I think this is A, and even higher A than low A, I think, is because I would consider playing this card and probably play it if it didn't have an ability. And on top of it,
yeah,
it
that's
has
fair.
an ability.
That's fair.
And a helpful ability, because it's very helpful ability.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Hans, the Emerald Hans, that is a 4-cost scheming prince. I think I put him right there with him in A tier. And the reason is he's 4-cost and 3 lore questing, which is really unheard of for 4-cost cards.
It's inkable too.
Yeah, and he's inkable.
No, what's the stat line?
3/3. Straightforward. 3 strength, 3 willpower, 3 quest. I mean, it's very a nuisance. Like, if your opponent has this card, you have to deal with it, because it'll rack up that questing really quick.
I would be upset I feel like I'd be kind of upset if I didn't get like a second turn like 6 lore out of it. I think if I'm only getting 3 for 4 costs, I want a little bit more.
But then your opponent is not getting anything out of it either, because they're having to take it out.
That's completely true, because it's a distraction card in that case.
Yep, a little bit of distraction, but okay, Cusco. I'm gonna go mid B, maybe a little bit lower B.
I agree.
So Cusco is a 5-cost card on Emerald. He quests for 3 as well, just like the Hans does. The difference is here, he's non-inkable, so that's a little bit of a downside there. And then lastly, he does have an ability, though, kind of like Flynn, where when you challenge and you get banished, you have to banish the opposing character. So not a card from the deck, but still. So even if you wouldn't have taken him out, or even if Cusco's strength wouldn't have taken you out, you still have to banish that character.
No, I completely agree.
So,
I think it's right where it needs to be.
Questing for 3, it's really strong from that sense, which is why it's so high. Getting up to another one, I think Mad Hatter is probably a little bit higher B tier. We'll put him like in front of Maui. So it's very similar. The difference here is that he is inkable with 5 costs, which is why he's a little higher. And then he does draw cards when challenged instead of banishing the challenging character.
This card was, I think, for me and you specifically, completely overlooked.
Super slept on initially, yeah. It's really, really cool. Really, really powerful. Okay, Mother Gothel, one of your favorites.
I'm personal S. For me it is S tier. Just because it is stopping your opponent from winning the game. And I think
okay, yeah.
The point of the game is questing and gaining lore, and Mother Gothel says no, you can't do that.
So Mother Gothel, 6 cost in Emerald, the Selfish Manipulator. When this character is exerted or questing herself, your other team, the whole team, cannot quest. And she's got 6 health, so she's going to be hard to take down in one turn. So you have to have something like Dragonfire or Maleficent or Be Prepared to really deal with. And so, if, like you said, it can stop the team in their tracks, and for 2 turns, maybe 3 potentially, depending on the board, the other opponent or your opponent might not be able to quest at all and get towards their goal. So I agree, it's really strong. I might not put it S tier because the amount of decks it fits in is not super flexible, but I still think it's so powerful with that stopping power.
For me, it is the single best card in the game.
That's a lot of praise.
It is. I don't know how big of a deal that is, but to me, it is the single best card.
Okay, we'll keep it S. Lastly, in Emerald, we have the song "Mother Knows Best," which takes a character's card and puts it back in their hand.
I think if you just are like, overwhelmed and you need to slow things down a little bit, super helpful.
Like Mother Gothel, she'll slow it down a lot.
I'm thinking, especially because it's non-inkable, I'm thinking C, high C.
I will completely agree. I think if it was inkable, it would be a really, really solid high B card.
Yep.
Not being inkable is really rough. Knowing what we talked about in one of our previous episodes, that you can only have a certain ratio,
put so many
in there. So I think that I'm right aligned to that on a high C. But again, stopping, and if they only have one card on their board and they're using that to win, you can pull it off. So I think it's got a lot of good power there. Okay, recap Emerald. We have Mother Gothel at S tier, your favorite. We have Hans and Flynn, both from Emerald, in A tier.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Mad Hatter and Cusco in B tier. And then lastly, we've got Mother Knows Best, the song, in C tier. No D tiers on Emerald. That's good. Pretty solid cards all the way around. And then lastly, kind of on our journey backwards, we end up at Amber.
All right. Now this is a fun one. So, Lilo.
I've really started to love Lilo.
And you've explained to me why you love it, and I get it.
Yeah.
Low B. Mid B?
Ooh, I was going to say high B. I'm going to say, like,
mid.
Right there B. Like,
okay.
Second B. And hear me out. I would put this up there at S tier if it was inkable. No, not if it was inkable. Oh no, you know what? You're right. It's not inkable. Let's drop it a little bit. Let's drop it below Hatter on a B tier. But the combination of Simba in Amber and Lilo in Amber is S tier. It's the fastest way to get out ahead in a game and to really put pressure on your opponent. By herself, she's very vulnerable because she only has 1 strength, 1 willpower.
I will say, if you only get 1 quest, she did her job.
Yeah, I agree. Which is why she's as high as she is.
Yes.
So Lilo, again, for people listening, is a 1 cost, 1 willpower, 1 strength card, but she quests for 2. Mm-hmm. So if you are playing Amber and you have a card like Simba that has Bodyguard, it's going to get a couple turns out of it, and it's going to be really, really powerful and put your opponent in a really big bind really fast.
Yep.
Okay. Next in Amber is Hades. So the Hades that we chose was Lord of the Underworld, and his ability is when you play this character, return a card from your discard to your hand. So early in the game, if you play him, you could return a card like Stitch or like Lilo, like we just talked about, to your hand and get some more questing power. If it's a little later in the game and you play it, potentially you've already played like Stitch Rockstar and he's in your discard and you can bring him back to the board. So I think that ability is really cool because it can halt your opponent's plans to discard some of your more powerful characters. Like if they Dragonfire something, you bring it right back. It can be really annoying to deal with. Where do you put him?
Mid B.
Agree. We'll go below the other Hades because he's not quite as powerful.
Yep.
So yeah, they can go hang out right there next to each other. All right, Stitch Rockstar.
So, I want to hear your opinion first. I haven't had much thought and much into this.
Okay, so Stitch Rockstar, again, for those not watching, is the big Stitch, the shifted Stitch on the Amber set. He's 6 cost, but can shift for 4. And then whenever you play with this character, or whenever you play a character that costs 2 or less, you can play that character, exert them right away, and then draw another card. So again, we're talking card draw, quests for 3. I want to say like high A. I don't think he's quite S tier because he's only got 5 health. Some of these other cards on here that we have lower have 6 health. You know, he has a really good ability. He quests for 3. The shift is obviously really powerful to get him on the board early. I don't think he's quite S tier. That's where I'm at.
I'm thinking more towards low A, high B because it is only 2 costs or lower. And I just think that is really situational.
But if you're playing a really aggro deck where you have Simba, Lilo, we have a couple other cards up here that are 2 cost or lower, like Maleficent or Flynn. If you have an aggro deck and really low cost, you'll have more of those in your deck, and you can, if you've got 4 or 5 ink in your inkwell, you can play 2 or 3 of them. exert, completely replenish, and then you've got 6 cards on the board.
I mean, I do agree. It's just I think I value it a little less. But no, I'm fine with Brave.
We'll drop him down below Aurora, above Mickey, Brave Little Tailor.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, we've got 2 more. We've got Lantern, the item, and Maximus, the bodyguard. So Lantern, the item, quick recap or quick refresh on this one is a 2-cost and non-inkable, but you do pay 1 less for the next item that you or the next character. Sorry, so you play this item, and then the next character you play costs 1 less, and it's an item, and so it stays on the board forever. So basically, every turn you have a character that can cost 1 less.
High C.
Okay, I'll go with that. I probably would have put it mid to high B if it was inkable, since it's not.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The value you get out of items, we've talked about this on some of the other ones. I think it's really high, so that's why it's pretty playable to begin with.
I will say it is close to S if you have multiple.
Yep.
It is close to S if you have multiple on the board, for sure. It could
be super annoying.
Yes.
Okay, and then lastly, and definitely not least, we've got the big Maximus from the Amber set, the Palace Horse, who has bodyguard and support.
Yeah, that's
which
huge.
is really, really annoying to deal with. So again, if you're playing a pretty light aggro aggressive deck with, call it Lilo, I don't know, a couple other 1 and 2 cost cards, maybe you're pairing it with Emerald and you've got a couple Flynns on the board, or maybe a Hans. Play the bodyguard, protect them all for a couple more turns. With 5 HP or 5 willpower, he's gonna do a ton of protecting for you. With 4 strength and the support, you're gonna be able to take out any character you want if you need to fight or challenge. So where do you think on him?
I'm thinking mid B.
I'm aligned. I would even say lower, maybe a little lower B. So like behind Cusco, before Fishbone Quill.
The only thing I don't get with this card is I think that the support is meaningless.
Yeah, support's a little weird. I mean, you do want him to quest because you want him to be exerted so that the bodyguard's active.
But he has bodyguard, so he's getting attacked, and you you don't want free attack, Like, if opponents are just attacking it, then they're not getting damage at all, and they don't... It's just... It's weird.
But support is, you adding your attack to another character's attack. So it's you supporting your characters and attacking their endeavors on your turn, and then you supporting your defense with his bodyguard on the opponent's turn. So I think low B makes sense. I think, again, it's pretty situational. It is inkable, though, so I think that's pretty helpful. So I think that's our tier list.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variety here. I think we added a bit of everything.
Tried to do some low cost aggro cards. Tried to do some really powerful, strong cards. Obviously a lot of the more powerful cards that win you the game towards the end are going to be higher on the list. But did some support cards in there too that are really important.
Super important, yeah.
So for anyone that is still with us after this long tier list, we appreciate it. Quick recap on Amber before we finish up. We have Stitch in A tier, the Rockstar. We have Lilo in B, as well as Hades in B, as well as Maximus Palace Prince in B. And then we have Lantern, the item, in C. So, again, that wraps up the usable cards. So, super playable. Even if they're low on the list, they're still super playable and can be found in any good deck. Any last thoughts, Jake?
No, I think this was really well rounded. I wasn't expecting B to be as flooded as it.
That's
as it
usually
turned
how
out
it
being.
should work out. A good
mid-range.
balance between the top and the bottom. So
I think for sure.
All right, well, everyone, thanks for listening. And again, if you want to follow us on other platforms, this will be up on YouTube at our channel at Illumineers Quest to see the tier list live and to be able to view it as we go through it. We also have a email account at lorcanapod@gmail.com if you would like to send us any suggestions, or if you think our tier list is crap and want to give us some feedback on that, please feel free to do that as well. And then lastly, you can follow us on X or formerly known as Twitter, at Lorcanapod as well. And we will catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.